Hello, Fleet. Wow, am I behind schedule? The last time I released one of these was actually about 2 weeks ago, so I am pretty desperately trying to catch up right now. Approximately about a week and a half ago, my computer decided that it was gonna go die on me, and then ended up finding out that the motherboard and the CPU of my computer had all died. So now I've been trying to play sort of catch up ever since that period of time. Okay. So first up, I guess some news, some things that have been happening. There's quite a few things that have happened since the last time I made one of these videos, including the fact that patch 4.1 has made it to the live servers. So I'll talk about that too. But first up, TwitchCon. For those of you who've paid attention to the North American World of Warships site in the last little while, you know that there was a contest for TwitchCon and for streamers. And I can tell you that I am going. So I am looking forward to those of you in San Francisco who are going to go to TwitchCon. Looking forward to seeing some of you guys there. Okay, so let's talk about patch 4.1 because that's the big thing. It's gone live. And, you know, now that we've had some time to sort of play with the changes, well, what do I think? Well, a few things are good. Graphics are beautiful now with the trees and everything. The islands finally look like they are alive. The sound is also much better. Gunfire sounds, AA. I love how AA sounds. I mean, now that A is distinctive. As the planes get closer, you can hear that distinctive sort of long range AA going off, the medium range AA going off, the close range AA going off. It's very, very distinctive. Definitely in love with the sounds for the guns and stuff. There is one sound that has gotten me a little bit sort of meh on. That's the one where you get citadeled. In the past, you got the sort of ringing, high-pitched sort of ringing sound almost, and that was okay. Now you've got that sort of high-pitched ringing sound, but you've also got like almost like a heartbeat thumping sound. It's a little bit weird to say the least. Anyways, other major changes that happened. There was a battleship dispersion buff, which was interesting because it was only supposed to go out to about 4 kilometers. But it seems to have done something a bit interesting. Ships like the Colorado, which used to be terrible by any stretch of the imagination, seems to have benefited from this change. I played the Colorado for the last couple of battles, and I've actually found that the Colorado seems to be decent now. Dispersion is a little bit better at longer range. So I think that change is actually helpful for ships that used to be pretty terrible because their guns had this crazy dispersion. So that's a good thing to have. CV balance. You knew I was going to talk about carriers because carriers is something that, is important in the game. First thing that's good. The carrier balance now is way better. Although the queue times can at times be a little crazy, but still, having equal carrier numbers in a battle is pretty darn nice. And I think that I gotta give big props to Wargaming for listening and trying to fix it. So definitely, big thumbs up there. But because now there are carriers in every battle, it has led to something that is, well, maybe not so nice. CV sniping has turned into a real sort of issue right now. Now, if the carriers are half competent, what they'll do is the minute the battle starts, they're going to send their bombers across the map to try to nuke the other carrier as quickly as possible. That wouldn't be so bad if fighters could actually protect you. But the fighters had a change as well. Remember that nerf to their damage, where now their damage is a lot closer together in terms of between tiers. But there's also been a reduction in the amount of damage they can do. But there was no change to the HP of planes. So the fighters now are really, really struggling to actually shoot down stuff. Yes, they have more ammo, but they're struggling against other fighters. They're struggling to shoot down bombers. So that is a bit harder to now defend yourself from enemy attacks. So it's definitely something there that I think needs a little bit of tweaking. Ironically, the fighters' lack of firepower has created some pretty interesting things because now they've also buffed bombers' rear guns. So earlier today I was in my Hear You and I was chasing a squadron of Ranger torpedo bombers, and as I was chasing this Ranger's torpedo bombers, I shot down I think 3 or 4 of the Ranger's torpedo bombers, but he shot down 2 of my fighters with his bomber's defensive gun, so I thought that was actually pretty amusing. But still, I mean, you know, there are changes still to be made. I know this game is still, you know, in a testing, working out phase, so do expect other changes. Still, it's interesting to pay attention to the fact that the fighter changes, which sounded really good on paper, in game, maybe not that good right now. Fighters in patch 4.1 also gained a barrage ability, which allowed them to expend approximately half their ammo to do sort of like a burst damage over an area that you designate. And, well, my experience with this ability in battle so far can be described as temperamental at best. I've had it where I've laid it out perfectly, fired through it, and like seemingly did almost no damage. And yet I've seen other people who've done it and have shot down a whole bunch of planes. So, I don't know, right now it just feels like it's a little bit temperamental. Maybe if they buff the damage on fighters a little bit more, this barrage ability will get much better as well. It's totally possible that the current barrage ability issues lie with the amount of raw damage the fighters are outputting, which, you know, if it's having problems, normally it's going to have problems with this ability as well. I don't know, that's just a guess. Okay, the Tirpitz, which I complained in my review video for having really poor AA, did get a little bit of a buff. Its 20mm flak now goes out to 2.5 kilometers without the advanced firing training, and with it, it goes out to 3 kilometers, which actually means the Tirpitz, while its AA is still not amazing by any stretch of the imagination, it does provide some kind of defense against some aircraft. So that's actually a good thing. The X-shape spawns on hotspot, which I was really against for a long time, well, I got really excited. I thought they were going to go away, but they haven't. The X-shaped spawns are still here, and I'm wondering if it's because maybe Wargaming just forgot to remove them from the map rotation. I'm not sure, but you will occasionally see the X-shaped spawn still on hotspot, although I've definitely had more battles where it wasn't that particular spawn. So, I don't know. I wish they would actually fix that and just take it out completely. The Furitaka, oh boy, that ship is truly, honestly scary now. That thing at tier 5, I went up against it in an Omaha, well, a Marblehead, which is basically an Omaha, but went up against the Furitaka in that particular ship, and oh boy, is that ship scary now. Those guns can pack a wallop. And yeah, probably one of the strongest tier 5 cruisers right now. I think maybe just behind the Murmansk, if not on par with the Murmansk. The Minakaze, much less scary now, in my opinion, because now the people who are really going to scare you are the ones who are actually really good with those 7K torps and really good with destroyers. But I mean, still an absolutely lethal ship. Doesn't have the 10K torps anymore, but with the fast, lower range torpedoes, can still be a deadly ship. Alright, one more piece of Tirpitz news. It'll be in the North American store starting September the 17th. And on that particular date, World of Warships is actually moving out of the open beta stage and going live. I'm actually kind of excited about the live release, I guess. I'm kind of interested to see what might appear on that particular day, whether it's like a special ship or a gift ship or something. I'm just pretty excited to see what will happen then. Also, patch 4.1 does actually show that Wargaming is working hard on the game, so I do think that this game will definitely get better with time. I mean, that's true for a lot of games. I mean, think about it, all the way back to, if I think back to like World of Warcraft, which I remember watching my friends play at the very early stages, and the game didn't look that impressive back then. I think that was maybe one of the big turnoffs for me as to why I didn't play the game. But later on, a lot of my friends, a couple of years later, when they were all fully decked out and everything, they were like, oh yeah, the game got so much better and there's so much more content. And I was like, oh, okay. And that's because games get patched. I actually played another game as well, Star Trek Online. Same thing. When the game first started, it was like, what? I bought this thing, really? But eventually got better, and I think that'll be the same with World of Warships, is that at the beginning there's still a lot of issues that they're working on. Eventually it'll become a much better game. It'll become a lot more feature rich, so cross your fingers and hope for it, guys. It's definitely coming. Also, on the day that the game goes live, I believe that's when ranked battles will begin, so definitely get those tier 6s and 7s ready for ranked. That is going to be some fun times. Finally, for those of you in the European server and in the European region, I am super jelly at one of your contests. There's apparently a contest for all of you. I know we had the TwitchCon contest, but there is a contest for those of you in Europe to get a free trip to Poland to attend a World of Warships community event at the Polish destroyer, and forgive me if I'm going to pronounce this terribly because, it is Polish. Błyskawica? Oh yeah, I've just totally messed that up. Anyways, do check the worldofwarships.eu website. Under the news section, there's an item called Setting Sail for Poland. Check it out. Enter that contest, and yeah, have some fun. Come on, guys, you're going to go see an actual Polish warship in Poland? It's pretty kick-ass. And finally, let's get to some of these questions because, yeah, I believe I do owe some people some answers. So let's get going. First up is a continuation of a question from the last episode from Andrew. And Andrew posted a question where he was wondering what the those sort of protruding things were at the back of the ship. Well, Andrew, they're propeller guards. I know somebody else is actually giving you that answer already, but I just want to confirm with you that it is propeller guards. And here's a picture of the USS Farragut. And as you can see, those propellers underneath those ships go way out onto the side, and so they need to have those propeller guards to prevent ships like tugs or whatever, when they're having to maneuver ships, from basically having their hull cut open by the propellers underneath the ship. So hopefully that answers your question. Next up is a question from Andre U85, and Andre is wondering, am I ever planning to play on the EU server? Well, Andre, I know, for me, the North American server is pretty much my home, and that's, pretty much where I've got all my stuff, and that's where I'm going to stay. But I am thinking that during, probably starting sometime in September, I'm going to do one of my streams during the morning to, early afternoon in North American time, which is basically it's going to be a stream that's dedicated for the EU player base. So during that period of time, I think I might actually be playing on the EU server. So keep your eye open for that, and we'll see how it goes. David Kaminsky first wants to tell me that he loves what I'm doing for the World of Warships community, and to that I say you're very welcome, David, and I'm glad I can provide you with entertaining and informative content. Now you've got 3 questions, so I will try my best to answer those. First of all, do I think the Lexington with its 8-inch guns is ever going to be introduced as a premium ship? I don't think so. I agree that it would be absolutely hilarious, but 8-inch guns on a carrier? I don't think that's happening, because can you imagine? The carrier would be pretty lethal. It can take care of most surface threats that come towards it. So the answer to that question is, I think, no. Second question, how do I feel about the progression system of ships through the tech tree as it is now? I think the progression is actually okay. I understand the preference that things be in a chronological order, but this is still in essence a video game, and in video games, the power and performance of a ship, I think, is really gonna determine whether or not something is okay or not. So I do think that it's okay the way they've done it, which is by the performance of the ship's firepower and things like that, and the size of its guns and so on and so forth. And of course, finally, the last question is, are they ever going to split the actual tech trees for the cruisers? They make a light cruiser line, a heavy cruiser line. I think that is happening. To the best of my knowledge, they were going to do that for the US tech tree. So, eventually I think you're going to see that split. But for now, with the single tech tree line as it is, I think this is what is going to stay for now. I think how they're going to do it in the future is maybe very similar to World of Tanks, where you'll see branching off from one ship to another tech tree, and you might see Cleveland stay, for example, at tier 6, and then you will see a branch off, one branch to heavy cruisers, another branch to the light cruisers, or you might see a different light cruiser take that spot at tier 6 and then have that split happen. Not sure, but that's just my guess though. Our next question comes from Infamous Viking, and it's actually not the first time I've gotten a question like this, and I'm thinking that hopefully in this episode I'll address it and hopefully answer some of your questions about this particular thing. So Infamous Viking is trying to start a YouTube channel, and he's new, and he wants to know if I have any sort of tips or advice or anything for him. Well, Infamous Viking, let me just put it for you this way. First, really big piece of advice for you, and this might sound like, you know, a generic answer, but it's really not. The first piece of advice I can give you is do what you really love and care about doing. And I don't have to go back. About a year ago, when I started this channel, I initially started with World of Tanks. It happened to be the game that I was playing at the time. And as much time and effort I put into making World of Tanks videos, they never really had me in it. You know, it was okay, but it wasn't me. And you know, I had to look at my gaming interests and go, what do I really like? What do I really enjoy? And you know, and also just what are my general interests? What do I care about? And for me, a couple of things sort of converged. One, I used to play Navy Field, which was a Navy game, you know, a naval warship and all that kind of game. Loved it, but it's an old game, really old, and not many people were playing it by the time I came around to YouTube. So I had to look around, and, you know, World of Warships was there. Not only that, but I also had a very strong historical interest, and that was just nothing related to games, just this historical interest in warships. And for many years, I would go onto YouTube and I would look for people who would make videos on warships, and there was just none. So instead of waiting for other people to make it, I just decided, heck with it, I'm just gonna make those videos myself, and then I'm just going to share with other people, and hopefully there are other people out there in the world who enjoy the same thing as I do. So let's go back to the first point. Why you know, make things that you actually love and care about? That's because if you love and care about something, you're really going to put in that time, and you're really going to put in that effort to make something truly awesome. I mean, if I didn't care about naval history, if I didn't care about warships, I didn't care about those things, I don't think I could have spent the hours that I did making those Know Your Ship videos, for example. Those things took a lot of time, especially the ones that I ended up having to do research on. Those took a lot of time, and yeah, if I didn't care about it or I didn't have the passion for it, don't think I would have made it. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is, and that's because I kind of went on your channel, took a look at the videos you have, really got to talk to people. People, and you know, you and your viewers, you form a connection when you talk to them and they get to listen to you talk to them. So you know, don't make a video where you just put it to music. It's not really gonna get you much. I mean, most people would just say, okay, cool, you had nice gameplay, some nice music, next. You know, talk to them, because your personality, your charisma, your the way you talk and everything, that's what binds people and connects people, and you know, to you and your channel. So you know, I hope this advice will help. I mean, it's not much. It's a lot of it is trial and error. You've got to try it out, experiment, you know, make mistakes, right? If you've ever watched Magic School Bus, it's almost like Miss Frizzle's advice, you know. Make mistakes, get messy, and try it out, because that's the only way you're really going to figure out your path to success. Interestingly enough, there was actually another question in the last episode that was kind of similar to Infamous Vikings question, and this one comes from NDV, who was wondering if I could make a playlist showing how I produce these videos, and how do I fund it, and so on and so forth. Well, first things first, I guess, about the funding. YouTube, even right now, doesn't provide me with enough funds to really, I guess, fund a normal kind of life or anything like that. So what I do is I keep a job as a tutor, and I use the money I make from tutoring to pursue other dreams, like making a YouTube channel and so on and so forth. So if there was one piece of advice there, if you are trying to be a YouTuber, keep a job for sure. Don't just go in there all out and don't have a job to back you up. You know, always have a job. You need the money, because there's very little to be made until you get really big. So then next up, I guess the next thing I have to answer is, how do you actually make good quality videos? Whoa, lots of trial and error. Lots of trial and error. You gotta really try things. You know, you gotta make mistakes. Like when I started, I made tons of mistakes, and even now I don't think it's perfect, and I try after every episode, every single time I make a video. I sit back afterwards, I look at it and I go, how can I make this better? Is there something I could do? Is there something I could say? Is there a way I can approach it that'll make it better? And it's just that sort of constant search for self-improvement, and eventually you get around to making relatively good videos. So, one day for sure I will make a video where I show you the entire process from start to finish, and you'll see how a video gets made. Lord Hellcat asks, do I think it's a good idea for wargaming to make it so that if you press a button you can match the speed of the ship you're escorting? Oh my god, Lord Hellcat, absolutely. I am just... oh god, I would so hope something like that gets put into the game. Truth be told, I go a little crazy when I try to escort a battleship and I'm in a faster cruiser and I'm constantly having to shift speed. Full, 3/4, full, 3/4, full, 3/4 every few seconds just to keep my speed relatively in check. Oh my god, I would absolutely love it if Wargaming were to put in a button where I could just be like, match speed with this. That would be super, super useful. Next up is a comment from Mustache Power, and Mustache Power was a little bit upset with the warshipstats.com website, as I don't think Mustache Power wants to see the same problems that have plagued World of Tanks with regards to XVM. Well, Mustache Power, I think one of two things. I think for now we're not getting anything XVM like for World of Warships. So I think that is not going to be the same as World of Tanks. But on the flip side though, I do think a website like Warship Stats is actually quite important because, statistics are a good measure of whether or not someone is good or bad at the game. So I do think a service like Warship Stats is actually an important thing for the Warships community to have. Now, as with regards to having XVM in game, something very similar to World of Tanks, I would say I would prefer it in the current sense where you don't have any of these color-coded who's good and who's not so good. So I do agree with you. I don't really want it to be like World of Tanks XVM system, but I do still think a stats website is actually quite useful to have. Our next comment comes from Ronnie Tage, and Ronnie cringes a little bit every time I say learn to hit citadels. And he agrees that citadels are important, but Ronnie thinks that with the current state of RNG and long-range shooting, it's almost impossible to line up perfect citadel hits, at least on a consistent basis. At least that's been his experience. Well, Ronnie, what I have to tell you, and might not be what you want to hear, but what I have to tell you is that the good players in the game, they're impacted by RNG in exactly the same way as you, and they're able to hit citadels quite consistently, even up to ranges of 20 kilometers and beyond. So a lot of it, and this is the big thing, a lot of it has to be with one, understanding the game mechanics, two, understanding how the whole aiming thing works in this game, three, understanding where that visual illusion might potentially come from, and then just four, trusting yourself to shoot at the right spots. The most I could do is say you might want to check out the latest Captain's Academy episode, the one I released I think a few days ago, with regards to how to aim properly. I've put that video up and I've gotten comments on that video where people said it has helped them hit stuff much more reliably, including citadels. So you might want to go and watch that video and give it a try and see if it helps, because even ships like the Colorado, using that method of aiming, I've hit citadels reliably out to 19 kilometers, basically what the max range of the Colorado is. So definitely something I would recommend trying out, and if you do, let me know how it goes. Alright, so Surya has asked a very interesting question for me. And Surya is wondering, is there any point in mounting upgrades on ships below tier 3? And also, is there a specific rule that I follow as to when I start mounting upgrades? Surya, typically I don't mount any upgrades on ships below tier 3, just because you're able to blow by those ships so quickly when it comes to leveling. A few battles and you're done. So there's really no point of mounting upgrades to ships below tier 3. My personal rule of thumb with regards to mounting upgrade modules onto ships is generally around tier 5 is where I start. And that's because from tier 5, that's where you're starting to get a bit of a grind. And so for example 5 to 6, there's a bit of a grind there. So that's roughly when I would start equipping upgrade modules. Typically anything below that, you're going to pass it by so quickly when you're leveling it's not really going to make a huge deal. Our next question comes from Stormrider Cherokee, and Stormrider is wondering, how come I am paying for repairs for my North Carolina even though I haven't taken a single point of damage at all? What's going on here? Well, Stormrider Cherokee, the way for me to explain this to you is that every single ship in the game has a set repair cost regardless if you take damage or not. It's almost like the cost of taking your ship out, and every single ship has it. At the lower tiers, you don't really feel it so much because the ship's cost is not very high, but when you get up to something like tier 10, you might be shelling out 100,000 credits just to take your ship into battle. It's kind of the reason why you hear a lot of players when they get up to tier 10, they're complaining that they don't have enough credits to run their ships, and that's because there's that huge cost of just taking that ship out and taking it into a battle. So hopefully that answers that question. Of course, don't forget that the better you do in a battle, the more credits you should be making. So even though you have that cost, shouldn't really impact you too much if you're actually doing well in game. And our last question for this week comes from Yumpin Yemeni, who is asking about assist kill points. And Yumpin is wondering, okay, so I'm doing 60 to 80% of the damage on the ship, and then the teammate snipes the kill. So, am I getting the experience for that, or what's going on there, or should I be getting assist points and so on and so forth? Well, Yumpin, let me answer this question for you. How I think your experience is calculated is almost purely based on how much damage you do. So if you're doing 98% of the damage to a ship, you're going to get the experience that's equivalent to 98% of that ship. And that kill really doesn't make a difference, I think, or even if it does, it's totally minor. Anybody who does finish off a kill and, KS's you or whatever, and gets those kills, they're not really getting a lot of experience. You should actually notice this if you went into a battle and you just solely KS'd other players. Let's just say you landed the killing blow on a bunch of ships. You would realize that at the end of that, you're gonna get a very, very, very little amount of HP, even though you have like 3 or 4 kills. So do I think the assist point things are necessary? Not really. I think it is perfectly fine as it is right now. Just experience is based on how much damage you do. And that's all, folks, for this week's episode of Sail and Chat. Of course, if you have questions, you have comments, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will address them in the next Sail and Chat episode. Anyways, folks, it is definitely time for me to go and head to bed. It's 4:52 a.m. in the morning as I'm finishing up this episode. So, if you guys like what I'm doing, don't forget to like and sub. Aside from that, I wish you all a fantastic week, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all on the high seas.